Hello everyone, welcome to Salesforce Predator. In this channel we discuss about various concepts and technologies in Salesforce. In this video series we are discussing about process builders. In today's video we'll see how we can schedule actions in process builder and what are the different considerations to be kept in mind. Okay, so we have a problem statement with us. Whenever a case is created with status as escalated, case should be assigned to this queue, case predator queue, after 1 hour of customer call date time. Okay, so this is a custom field we have created for demo purpose, right? So we'll go to our Salesforce org, search for process builder. We'll create a new process. We'll name it as case assignment to queue, and we'll start our process when a record changes. Okay, next is we need to select an object. So in our case we have to select case object, and we'll start our process when a record is created. Now one important thing to be kept in mind is, these scheduled actions are available only in two scenarios. Okay, first, when we select this start process field as only when record is created, or second scenario, when a record is created or editor is selected, but at the time of actions we select a checkbox: do you want to execute an actions only when specified changes are made to record. Okay, so for now we have selected only when a record is created, because in our problem statement it's mentioned whenever a case is created on with status escalated, only then we will change the owner. Okay, so we'll click on save. Next is we need to add criteria. We'll specify name as escalated case is created. Okay, and we'll specify conditions. So it has to be status of case. So status is null equals to false, and again status equals to escalated. Okay, we'll keep all the conditions are met as checked, and we'll click on save. Now next thing is we need to create schedule actions. So for creating scheduled actions, first thing is we need to set a schedule, and then we need to specify the associated action for that particular schedule. Okay, so we'll set a schedule now. Now while setting a schedule, you have two options. First is some particular days or hours after some particular field. Okay, so you can select close date, created date, or any other date time fields or date fields. Okay, and next option is some particular date or time after days from now. Now means whenever this criteria is satisfied, after that this time will be counted. Okay, so like 4 hours after the criteria has been satisfied, or 4 days after criteria has been satisfied. Okay, so for now we will select this based on our criteria. And what criteria we need to set? So it is 1 hour after customer call date time. Okay, so we'll select 1 hours after customer call date. Okay, and we'll save our schedule, and we will add a action associated to this schedule. So what action we need to add? We need to assign this case to particular queue. Okay, so we'll specify update record, assign case as action name, and we need to specify record to update. So it has to be the case record that started your process. Okay, so we'll click this, and we'll specify no criteria, just update the record. And here we'll specify owner ID. We'll select type as queue, and we'll find the queue. It's case predator queue. Okay, and we'll click on save. So this is the action we have created associated with this schedule. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just activate our process. Okay, so this is how you can create a process with the schedule, and you can associate an action as with that particular schedule. Okay, so before testing this process, we'll go to our presentation and look into some points. Okay, so what are the different scenarios in schedule actions? First is, this schedule action is evaluated based on the time zone of a user who created this process. Okay, next, if schedule evaluates to a time in past, Salesforce execute the associated action as soon as possible. Okay, so for example, in our process, let's say I would have selected 0 hours, or let's say 7 hours after the customer call date, and while creation of a case I would have selected customer call date as today, right? So the criteria for this schedule has already been passed, right? So for that, Salesforce will execute the action as soon as possible. Okay, we can consider one more example. Let's say a process emails an opportunity owner 7 days before the close date. Okay, and process starts for opportunity with close date set to today. So in that case, Salesforce will execute this action as soon as possible, right? Next is, if the field referenced by a schedule action has null value, Salesforce will ignore this schedule and associated actions are not executed. Now, if you set a schedule to 0 days after a date, so Salesforce will execute the action as soon as possible, correct? So let's say if I go here and I would have selected 0 hours or 0 days after the customer call date, right? And I would have selected customer call date as time now, then this action would have executed as soon as this process executes. Okay, next important point is, when a process schedule an action, Salesforce creates a flow interview record and pause the interview until scheduled time occurs. Okay, and if paused flow interview is deleted, then Salesforce will not execute that particular action. Okay, so this point we're going to see it now. Okay, so we'll go to our Salesforce org and we'll test this flow by creating a case record with satisfied criteria, and we'll see all these points. Okay, so we'll create a new case, and for status I have to select as escalated, and we have this customer call date field, so we'll select current time and we'll save this record. Okay, also we need to select case origin, so for that we'll select email. Now this record has been created. Okay, now let's say we want to check whether our action has been scheduled or not. Okay, so where can we check that? So we need to go into the setup and search for flows. If you open these flows, you'll find a list over here, paused and waiting interviews. Okay, so if you can see, a new record has been created in this list, and it is nothing but the record which is created by this process scheduled actions. Okay, so if you open this is nothing but a scheduled record created by our process. And if you can see the pause date, so this date is nothing but the time at which this schedule has been created. Okay, now let's say you don't want this schedule to execute, so you have a delete option over here. You can delete this schedule. Okay, we'll look into next points. Okay, so there are two ways using which schedule actions could be created. So first is when we select when record is created as criteria, right? So we'll look into points specific to this first. Okay, so for processes that start when a record is created, Salesforce never re-evaluates the record associated with that process. Okay, so the schedule time for the action stays same even if the record no longer meets the associated criteria when schedule actions are executed. Okay, so if you make changes to that record and let's say the criteria is not satisfied for this record now, so what will happen to the actions which are already scheduled by the process? So will it change? No. So those actions will be kept as it is and they will be executed, so it won't reevaluate the records which are scheduled, right? And this happens when we have selected start the process when record is created checkbox. Okay, next thing is, if a record or object that schedule is associated with is deleted, then Salesforce cancels the actions for this record. Okay, so we'll see these points. We'll go to our Salesforce org. Okay, and let's say if I'll keep both the tabs side by side. We'll refresh this just to verify. Okay, now let's say if I delete this record, okay, so what will happen to this schedule? So it should get deleted. Okay, so if I try to delete this record, we'll refresh this to check the schedule. So we can see there is no schedule now because the record associated with this schedule has been deleted. Okay, next we see this point. Let's say I'll create one more case record. We'll put status as escalated and customer call date as current date time. We'll save this record. We'll refresh flows and we can see a new schedule has been added over here, right? Now let's say we'll make changes to the records so that this criteria is not satisfied now. Okay, so one yeah, so case status pick list is escalated, right? So let's say if I change from escalated to new, okay, so what will happen to this schedule? Because now the criteria is not satisfied, right? So let's refresh this. You can see the schedule is not removed. So even if the criteria is not satisfied after creation of this schedule will be there in the list and it will execute. Okay, so this is one thing you need to keep in mind while working with schedule. And when you have selected when this checkbox, the process starts when a record is created. Okay, so what checkbox I'm talking about? So it is this checkbox. So only when a record is created, if you have selected, so at that time, even if the criteria is not satisfied after creation of schedule, the schedule will be there in the list and it will be executed. Okay, and one more thing is, let's say if I try to deactivate this process, okay, so will this schedule be removed? Let's check that also. Let's say I deactivate this process. Okay, so I have deactivated this process. I'll go to the list of schedules and I'll try to refresh this. You can see the schedule is still there. Okay, so even if you deactivate the process which you have created and which have fired this schedule in the first place, still this schedule will be there in the list and it will be executed. Okay, so you cannot remove this schedule directly. So if you want to remove it from the list, you can create like delete this schedule from here using this delete action. Okay, so we had one point here. Let's say if you set a schedule 0 days after date, so we'll test this point also, what will happen. So this schedule we will delete for now and we will activate this process. Oh, before that we'll clone this and make changes to the schedule. So I'll go there, I'll go to the schedule and here I'll specify 0 hours after customer call date. Okay, we'll click on save and we will activate this version now. Now I'll go to the case tab, we'll click on new case and we'll specify status as escalated, case origin as email and customer call date as now. Okay, and let's say what happens when we save this case record. Okay, so as soon as I click on save, I'll go here in the flow and I will refresh this. You can see a new schedule has been created and it is there as a pending one in the list. Okay, so as soon as resources will be available, it should get executed. So if I try to refresh this, still it is not executing. We'll see when it gets executed, because we have specified criteria as 0 hours after customer call date. Okay, so 0 hours means now only. So we will continue refreshing and verify when it will execute. Okay, it should get executed whenever resources are available for it. Yeah, see, the case owner got changed to case predator queues. That means this should be executed now. Yeah, you can see the record is removed. Why? Because it got executed and the owner of case changed to this queue, right? Okay, so this was all about the process where we made selection as only when record is created. Okay, so let's say what happens when we make selection as when a record is created or edited, and use the checkbox and created a schedule action. So we'll verify that also. So for that, we'll go to the all processes, and we have one more problem statement with us. Okay, yeah, so we have a problem statement. Whenever a case is created or updated with status as working, then case should be assigned to this queue 1 hour after customer call time date. Okay, so one difference is there. This will be when created or updated, and status will be working. Okay, so we'll go to our process, we'll click on new process, assign case on update or create. We'll specify name. We'll start process when a record changes. We'll specify object as case, and we'll specify start the process when a record is created or edited. Okay, we'll save this. We'll go to the criteria. We'll specify criteria is name as assign case, and we'll select field as status. Is null false. We'll again select status. Equals to working this time. Okay, and here we need to select this checkbox. Do you want to execute the actions only when specified changes are made to record? If you don't select this checkbox, schedule actions won't be available to us. Okay, so if I click on yes and save this, you can see as soon as I save, schedule actions become available for us. Okay, so we'll go to schedule and create a schedule. We'll specify 1 hours after customer call date. Okay, and we will save this. We'll specify action as update records and action name as assign case. Record type should be the case which started this process, and we should be updating owner of this case to a queue, right? So that is nothing but a predator queue. We'll save this action. Okay, now there is difference between these two processes, a process which we created earlier and the process which we have created now. The schedule actions behave differently. Okay, now if I try to activate this process, I'll go to a case tab. We'll verify what happens when we create a case. Okay, so I'll create a case. So at the moment no schedule actions are there, right? So I will create a case, and this time we'll specify status as working, case origin, and customer call date. Okay, I'll click on save record. So as soon as I created a case, I'll refresh this and we'll see a new schedule has been added. Okay, and this schedule is created using the new process which we have created now. Okay, similarly we can see a delete button here if you want to delete schedule. Okay, now we'll look into a very important point. So we'll go to our presentation. Now for the processes that start when a record is created or edited, actions remains scheduled only as long as criteria for the actions are still valid. Okay, so if the record does not match the criteria now, Salesforce cancels the schedule action for this record. Okay, so this is opposite to that of when a process starts when record is created. Okay, so we'll test this. We'll go to our Salesforce org, and we can see schedule action is there in the list. So let's say if I go to this particular case record for which schedule action has been scheduled, right? And if I try to modify the status field, okay, so if I make it as new instead of working, click on save. Now if I change the status, this record is not satisfying the criteria for this schedule action, right? So what will happen to this schedule actions? So if I refresh this, I can see the schedule action has been removed. Okay, so this happens why? Because we have selected this checkbox when a record is created or edited. If I would have selected only when record is created and changed the pick list value over here, and if criteria would not have been satisfied, still record for schedule action continues to be there and it will be executed. Okay, so this is difference between the two, when we start a process when a record is created and when a record is created or edited. Okay, next is if field referenced by the schedule changes and schedule hasn't been processed, then Salesforce recalculates the schedule time for the actions. Okay, so if we change the customer call date, so it will recalculate the time at which this schedule action will be executed. Okay, we can take another example for this point. Let's say a process emails an opportunity owners 7 days before opportunity close date. Okay, and the close date is set to 22. Okay, Salesforce schedules the email to be sent on 13th, right? Because date is 20, it will send email at 13th, 7 days before the close date, right? Now before the email is sent, if the close date is updated to 10, okay, right, so Salesforce will recalculate the schedule time and schedules the email to be sent on 3, that means 7 days before to the updated date. Okay, so this was all about the schedule actions. If you have any questions related to schedule actions, you can write it down in the comment sections. This is very important topic in process builder. Okay, so a lot of questions are asked in interview regarding this, so you need to practice this hard. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. Do not forget to subscribe this channel.